We've been talking about lines of attack that Team Trump has been trying against Kamala Harris, including before she selected Tim Walz as her vice presidential running mate and then since. And there's really bad news for Trump, which is that so far nothing is working. Trump team is panicking. This is why he's saying, I'm not going to debate. I am going to debate. This is why he's attacking her based on her laugh or DEI, essentially saying, I know from the color of her skin that she's not really qualified to do the job she's doing. These are the sorts of attacks that are coming because Trump is desperate. Trump is completely and totally desperate. And I want to show you some of the coverage about this and what the implications might be. And the context is the conversation that I had last week with Tim Miller, Republican strategist type guy and historical Republican who is an anti-Trump Republican at this point in time. Washington Post has a report. Trump, with a history of sexist attacks, again faces a female opponent. Strategists and aides from both parties are girding themselves for an election steeped in allegations of sexism and racism. You know, talking about allegations makes it almost seem like anybody could hurl allegations, regardless of whether they're empirically based or not, when the truth is a lot of what we're hearing about Kamala Harris is sexist and racist. She became black, DEI, the way she laughs, etc. There's also an interesting report from the New Republic. Trump team panics about his attacks on Kamala Harris backfiring. Trump's allies are worried they can't control him as he attacks Vice President Kamala Harris. And then finally, from KXAN NBC, Republican pollster says Trump talking about Harris as a DEI candidate would backfire. And one of the ways we know that it seems to be backfiring is that several Fox News hosts have even started to point out, hey, by the way, when you're calling her dumb, when you're going after her laugh, DEI, this stuff isn't working. It's name calling. We don't think it's going to be effective in defeating her. And even some Republicans are starting to agree. So let's go through it. Childless, at least as far as biological children, DEI, the way she laughs, failed border czar, which starts to teeter maybe on policy. And then things like she's not super smart, she's low IQ. Trump has been saying she didn't pass the bar exam on the first try, although, of course, ultimately she did and was a successful lawyer. A lot of these things are not polling well with exactly the people that Trump needs to win over: suburban women, independents, etc. I already told you earlier this week that when J.D. Vance goes to a rally and yells out about Kamala Harris wants to take your gas stoves and Kamala Harris wants to make it so you can't have red meat anymore, that stuff isn't going to work on the people you actually need to convince. At a Trump rally, it will get cheers. But you're not going to, at this point, get into serious corporate media reporting about, is she really trying to take away beef from you? Is she really trying to take gas stoves? You know, the gas stove thing, I don't want to go back over it in total, but we've talked about how the Biden administration, forget about the fact that they're not even trying to take away gas stoves. They wouldn't even have the authority to take away gas stoves. And even if induction is great, and I can vouch for it, it really is great. These are just lies. So the problem is, how do you go after Kamala Harris in a way that will be more effective? Tim Miller's idea was you kind of just use the generic playbook that's always used. She's far left. She wants to defund the police, even though she doesn't. She's going to raise middle-class taxes, even though she won't. She'll make the border be wide open, even though obviously she wouldn't. Just kind of like run the normal playbook, deficit this and that, even though it's Trump who blew up the deficit by record amounts. Go with that. And then if you can, and they're starting to do this, also attack her vice presidential running mate as extreme, even though when you actually see his views placed on the political compass, it is all really very moderate. So a few other comments from people on the right who recognize this is very much going in the wrong direction because nothing is landing. Republican pollster Whit Ayers warned that, quote, taking shots at her race and gender would be a political liability. And in general, these ad hominem approaches to running a campaign, they can work narrowly, but backfire big picture, I think is the way that I would say it, because you risk alienating. I don't even know that I want to call them undecided voters at this point, because is anyone really undecided? But swayable voters maybe would be the way that I would say it. So for now, there is significant concern on the Republican side about what is going to be the approach. Do we just try to win on turnout without attacking, or do we have to find some line of attack? And then lastly, if indeed the debates are going to happen, Trump-Harris and or Vance-Walz, what are going to be the approaches there? And we'll have time to discuss that.